So I've been with the Denver Police Department for the last 25 years. And in that time, the last 10 years, I've been a sergeant. And for a little over 6 years now, I've been in the sex crimes unit for the Denver Police Department.
Okay, so tell us how you first learned about Start by Believing.
Back in, actually, when I was just promoted as sergeant, the Denver Police Department was adopting the Start by Believing campaign, and they did an excellent job. They did billboards and bus stops on the benches. So they made it a priority amongst the public and also within the Denver Police Department. So I guess it's been about 10 years now.
Okay. Tell us what Start by Believing means to you.
So, I always start this out. It's unfortunate. I always say that we have to have a Start by Believing campaign, right? But I completely understand why. And to me, and to what I stress with my detectives, is that we're giving victims a chance. That's what Start by Believing to me is, and my detectives. We're giving them a chance to be heard. We're giving them a chance to tell their story, and we're giving them a chance to have their case investigated. And hopefully, the greatest outcome of all would be we're giving them a chance to bring their suspect or perpetrator to justice and get a conviction. So ultimately, even if the outcome is, it doesn't go to trial, I also think that Start by Believing helps the victim to start healing. And no matter the outcome of their case, they're just able to move on and take control back of their lives.
I don't know if you see the comments scrolling, but somebody just said you're the real Olivia Benson.
Yeah, she could play me in my TV career, right?
Well, I have a question that I didn't send you originally, but I think it's kind of in line with what you were just talking about. One of the things we think about is what does Start by Believing look like in practice? So, from a law enforcement professional, when you take a Start by Believing approach with a survivor, what does that look like?
So, it starts, I train recruits in the academy. We do a block on sex assault training, and studies have shown, and I've done a lot of research, and I really try to stress this with the first responder on the street, the patrol officer, all the way through detectives, all the way through to our DA's office. But they have shown that that first contact with the victim makes all the difference in the world if they're going to continue forward with an investigation. So if they're treated with dignity and respect, and they feel that they're believed and listened to, I think that's even a bigger part. We're just there to listen to them. And we take a report, and then it moves, of course, onto our detectives. But to me, that's the most important thing, that that this enables them to cooperate with the law enforcement investigation, hopefully follow through to the end of the process, like I said before, get a successful conviction, and the victim is able to have closure and they can move on with their lives.
Absolutely. I like that you added in that being listened to. Survivors want to know that they're heard.
Oh, definitely. Yes.
Okay. So I think we've kind of talked about this, but I'll ask it anyway and see if you have any different thoughts on it. How can a Start by Believing approach help a survivor?
Yeah, as I already touched a little bit on it, but I just think, like I said, it's just unfortunate we have this campaign. Like we talk about any other crime, right? Patrol officers or detectives investigate. There's no question. We're not questioning the victim from the get-go, but for whatever reason, and I know many of the reasons, we don't have time today to get into that, but why victims of sex assault aren't believed. So it's just the impact on believing victims is just huge. Yeah. Sex assault investigations, I've found out through my time now in the last 6 years, they take a long time. If we do everything right and we're getting back the DNA results and we're putting together the strongest case, they could take a couple of years to come right to a conclusion. So if we treat that victim from the very get-go, start by believing them, and then treat them with that same respect and dignity throughout the entire process, which could drag on for years, then we maintain the victim, they maintain cooperation, we maintain a relationship with them, we keep contact with them. And ultimately, like I said, they end up testifying in court and they feel supported by us. And then, the greatest outcome of all is we get a conviction and the perpetrator goes to prison. And they see that. And I think that's great closure to the victims. I think there's no better thing that we can do for a victim than to see it all the way through to the conviction. So.
Well, we already talked about Olivia Benson a little bit, but I think people watch these television shows and they have this assumption that these cases move quickly.
Yeah.
That in one frame you go from assault to conviction. Obviously, people don't think it happens that quickly, but I think it's hard to break that. I guess that myth that these things do actually, unfortunately, take quite a bit of time.
It is, unfortunately, the CSI effect, as they call it. We definitely have to explain to victims that, yeah, we haven't forgotten about them. And, those few phone calls throughout the time. And then, yeah, just keeping them up to date. There's even some laws now in place in Colorado that they just passed. One of them being that we have to call and keep our victims updated on all lab results that come back. So that's a great law that passed. So that we can keep them in the loop about everything on their case. So I hope other states adopt laws like that as well, because I think that was a really positive thing that happened here in Denver.
Absolutely. Okay, can you think of a specific case where Start by Believing made an impact? You don't have to give identifying information or anything.
Yeah, gosh, there's so many when I think about this. You know, one of the cases that comes to mind, this was several years ago, and unfortunately it involved an outside jurisdiction, involved a police officer was the perpetrator. And the victim went to the hospital, and when they told her they were going to call the police, she freaked out, right? The suspect was a police officer, and she absolutely panicked. So she left the hospital and went home and talked to her mom, and her mom did not believe her. And so I can't imagine how devastating it had to be that first she's at the hospital and then she talks to her mom. So ultimately, we used to have a platform, I'm sure Seek Then Speak, that you know about. And ultimately, I'm not sure how the victim was able to come across it on Google, but she did. And she made the report directly to my sex crimes unit. And as soon as we got that report, of course, we started investigating it and we gave her a call. And I think a little bit of the damage, unfortunately, was done with her mom and with the hospital. But the detective that we appointed to that case did an excellent job in really gaining back the trust of the victim and really, really assuring the victim that we believe you and we're going to move forward with this. And I think that was huge that the detective really took the time to sit down before even getting any other facts, anything, just sitting down and first of all, telling the victim how much we understand, we're so sorry, what happened previously. And then, then of course, moving on with the investigation. So that to me was just huge, because to think of, I can't imagine my own mom not believing me, reporting such a horrific event. And ultimately, he was convicted. There was 3 victims, and he was convicted and did go to, he'll be in prison probably for the rest of his life. So that was huge for Start by Believing. And that's another reason why I think it's great that we reach out to the community, because it's not just law enforcement that needs this campaign. It's the community that needs this campaign as well, because everyone's guilty of it, right? On all across the spectrum. So that's one of the cases that stuck out in my mind for sure.
Well, that's a fantastic example. And, just from a research perspective, we know that survivors receive more negative responses from friends and family members when they disclose than they do from first responders. So, like you said, the community aspect of that campaign is as important, and I would even argue sometimes more important than having the whole criminal justice response involved, because survivors reach out to those loved ones first, and we want that positive experience. I love that you also mentioned seek than speak because, those two programs can sometimes go together very nicely. Start by Believing,
Yeah.
first providing that alternative avenue to reporting that allows the survivor to share the information in sometimes a safer way, but then ultimately being believed by that detective was what set that. So that's a great example. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, no problem.
So let's talk a little bit more about the Denver Start by Believing efforts. I know you mentioned billboards. Can you get into the specifics a little bit more?
So one of the other things that we've done, I believe it was 2021. I think I checked my facts, but I did a lot of research on Evowie's website for Start by Believing. They have so much good information on there, and it's a lot of information. So I kind of I put it all together in kind of a short, simple, straightforward 10-minute. It's about a 10-minute video called Start by Believing, and I introduced it to the police department here, and our chief was very supportive of it, which was absolutely awesome, because we always need the upper administration to, support us. And he made it mandatory in the Denver Police Department that everyone had to watch it, and sign off that they'd watched it. So it's now become a part of our training. When I go out to the academy and train the recruits, that video is shown and they have to watch it during the sex assault training block. So that's one way that we've tried to really instill that culture here at the Denver Police Department. We have great support from the mayor's office and city council on Start by Believing Day. They've joined us. They've signed the pledge along with us. So that's been really great too. So yeah, just overall, the campaign here in Denver feels very supported, and we celebrate Start by Believing Day, every April. And I think we do a pretty good job trying to, come up with new ideas and get the word out, like you said, to the community and to law enforcement.
Fantastic. And your training video, for those of you that are interested in viewing it, it is available on the Start by Believing website. It's on the resource page. We did that, and we were so grateful to have that as an option to highlight. And I'm so grateful that you said that the resources on the website were helpful to you. Had you been to any formal Evaluate training before in your career or after you became a sergeant or anything?
Yeah, actually, I was fortunate enough. I got to go when I first got into the sex crimes. I did go to Valley, and I also went to a COVA conference. So I learned a lot about sex assault reporting, Start by Believing, the effects of trauma on victims and their reporting and recall. I've also just done a lot of online stuff. Evaluate has some great virtual training as well, which I also have my new detectives in my unit. They take some of the online free classes that Evaluate offers, which is great.
Oh, that's fantastic. I'm so glad to hear that.
Yeah.
If anybody that's listening is interested, it's our online training institute, and they are free. You can set up an account, and you can access any of the training modules that we have available there. So I'm glad to hear that those are being utilized. Which
Yeah.
you attend? Do you remember which city you were in?
So the COVA conference was here in Keystone, Colorado, and the Evaluate one was in San Diego.
Okay, so that would have been 2019. Does that sound familiar?
I think so. That's probably about right. I'm really bad at time. So.
We're back in San Diego. Forward to going back.
Oh, nice.
Okay, so let's see if there's any other. Can you think of any other positive results from your efforts? For example, in Kansas City, Missouri, when they put their billboards up, they were able to determine that requests for hospital forensic exams, hospital advocates, and police reports all went up. When the billboards were taken down, the reports went down. There were similar effects in San Luis Obispo and at Arizona State University. And I know that reporting isn't the only metric, but can you think of any positive results that you've seen in Denver?
So we do get a report every month, the caseload and how many cases we have. And, I'm no scientist. I know there's a lot of cause and effect reasons, but I will say If you look at our May numbers are always higher. And I would like to think that has something to do with the Start by Believing campaign throughout April. So I know I can't, positively say that, but, 6 years of data, I think would show, minus the COVID year. But it is interesting to me that we have a little bit of spike in reporting in May. So I would certainly say it has to do with the Start by Believing campaign. That's my own professional opinion. So
I like that. No, I think anecdotal information like that is great. So I'm happy to hear that. There was one question in here. I'm going to scroll back till I can find it. Somebody was wanting to clarify, is there a specified unit that responds to these cases? So you want to talk about your unit a little bit?
Um, so the process, there's a couple different ways that a report will come across my desk, but generally, if the victim calls our dispatch, then a patrol officer will go out and they'll be the initial contact and they'll take the report. If it's a case where we might need a search warrant or just depending on how serious the sex assault is, then they will give the sex crimes unit a call, and detectives can also be called out to start investigating it. Otherwise, the officer does the report, and then it goes to the sex crimes queue, and it comes across my desk every morning, and we read several cases, and then those cases are assigned to my detectives. In Denver, we have 10 sex crimes detectives that we're able to assign cases to. And then the other way that we get a lot of cases is victims will go directly to hospitals. And then if they want to make a police report and talk with an officer, then the hospitals, of course, will get in touch with dispatch and make that happen. So those
Okay.
are the main ways.
Thank you for asking. If anybody else has questions, you're welcome to put it in the comments. We'll get to them as well. While we're waiting to see if there's any questions, can you talk just very briefly, because I know that you have a great victim advocacy unit within the police department. Can you talk about the role of the victim advocates?
Yeah. So Denver is very lucky that we have our own victim assistance unit right here in Denver. So they reach out to all of our victims of sex assault, and we work very closely with them. So if we end up going out on a call and we want to provide resources, or maybe the victim doesn't want to talk to an officer at the time, but they're willing to talk to a victim advocate, the victim the victim advocate will go out and talk to the victim, which is a great resource to have. When they come down to headquarters for interviews, one of the first stops they make is to our victim advocate unit, where they're offered various resources, whether it be, for counseling, or maybe they need financial resources, whatever it is. Our VAU handles just helping out with all of that. So yeah, they have been great. They also help us out with, let's say a victim doesn't necessarily want to move forward with their investigation, but we have that law where we need to notify them of labs and stuff. We figure it's better to hear from a victim advocate than a police officer, because they didn't want to talk to us in the first place. So they've also helped us out with notifying victims, which has been great, because I think the victim rather talk to a victim advocate at that point and not to a detective or a police officer. So that's been really helpful as well.
Okay. A couple of questions. First question is, how many sex crimes happen within a year? So let's obviously tailor that to Denver. About how many?
We average about 1,500 cases a year.
Okay. 1,500 cases a year. And another question is, what advice do you have for other law enforcement agencies that are thinking about launching a campaign? And then a second part of the question is, how can they communicate to their officers or command staff about why it's worthwhile?
Well, I would start with the Valley website. I mean, you guys have all the best resources ever, how to launch a campaign. You even offer tools. You've got the logos. I mean, I would definitely advise to go to Valley's website. They have a lot of different tools and advice on how to do that. And the second part of the question, I think you definitely have to sit down face to face with the upper administration, and I would show them, there's studies that show the impact that we have on victims and how we treat them from the very get-go. And Start by Believing is shown in the science that victims, their process of healing and sticking with the law enforcement investigation throughout is higher and increases if we start by believing. So I think if you show them statistics and definitely just have a heart-to-heart conversation with them, I think that's the best place to start. Because in 2024, if there's any chiefs or division chiefs that aren't on board with Start by Believing, I don't think it's going to be very difficult to convince them otherwise. They could give me a call if they'd like. I have no problem talking to anyone about it.
Yeah. Well, I want to point out it's a training bulletin, and the title is Improving Responses to Disclosures. And it really goes through all of those dynamics that you mentioned, the reporting dynamics, the rate of survivors that feel that participation can be helpful or unhelpful. And then it goes into the Start by Believing campaign specifically. So it's a really, really good resource for anybody who kind of wants that, I'll say, evidence to back up why police departments should be supporting Start by Believing. So here's another question. If a sex crime happens in Denver, and if the victim doesn't want to come forward, but somehow does, how does that work here in Denver? So this is maybe somebody drove them to the hospital or the police station and is kind of thrust this person into reporting, but isn't sure about it. That's kind of my guess, but maybe.
Yeah, without knowing all the details, I can kind of break it down. We've got 3 options for victims in Colorado on how they can report a sex assault. They can remain anonymous. So if they go to the hospital and they want to do a SANE, they do not have to give any information at all to police. They don't even have to see a police officer. They can be anonymous. And then the hospital notifies the police department, and we get their SANE kit, and we will store it in Denver indefinitely in case they change their mind. We have that evidence. Second option is a medical option. So they go to the hospital, once again, kind of like you said, a friend drives them to the hospital. Maybe they want to just give their name and date of birth, but they don't want to talk about it at this moment. Once again, we'll do a report with the most basic information. We'll collect their SANE kit and we'll put it into property, and we'll have that evidence. And they can call us. By law, we have to keep that SANE kit for as long as that crime can be prosecuted, which basically in Denver means indefinitely. We're keeping it indefinitely. So they can change their mind if they feel at that time at the hospital they don't want to talk to us, but they want to move forward at a later time. So the hospital provides them a case number, and they can call my unit, give us the case number, and then we can move forward. And then, of course, the third option is the law enforcement option, where we would start a full investigation. We would respond to the hospital, and then the officer or the detective would talk with the victim. So hopefully that clarifies that question.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Can you clarify what a SANE exam is?
Yeah, so that's a sex assault examination, nurse examination, where they take swabs. It's a pretty intrusive exam, but it's a very useful tool as we get lots of evidence and solve lots of cases through DNA. So they're swabbing, they swab the victim, the inside of their mouth, cheek swabs, and then of course, anywhere that's relevant to the sex assault. So if it was in the vaginal region or in the anal region, wherever the relevance is of where that sex assault happened, then that's what the nurses are swabbing. They also, it could include photos as well. And then they document any injuries. So it's a really valid exam. And that's why if they do complete one at a hospital, that's why the Denver Police Department will hold on to that if they're not ready to move forward. We'll hold on to it indefinitely.
Thank you for that. Now, because I know a lot of people are joining from the Denver area, is there one particular hospital in Denver that survivors have these exams, or is there more than one location?
Well, unfortunately, I know there was some cutbacks with hospitals, which really broke my heart. They've stopped doing SANE exams. So actually, as we move forward, we've actually lost more hospitals doing SANE. So yes, there are some particular hospitals. Denver uses 2 in particular that we go to, but there are some in the metro area and outlying areas that still do them. But yeah, the number has decreased instead of increased, unfortunately.
That's too bad. see any new questions coming in. We've got about 3 minutes left. Is there any last things you want to say before we sign off?
Um, no, I appreciate that you guys have started this campaign and continue to, provide all the resources and tools online. And um, I don't know, afterwards, if you want to put my email, I have so many examples for uh, upper admin. If there's those who want to convince their upper administration that this is a great campaign, I can provide many, many examples that I think would help convince them. So if you want to provide my email, that's fine. I'd be more than willing to talk to anyone about this because it's very important to me and it definitely makes a difference.
Well, I can definitely tag the Denver Police Department in the post so that they can reach out and try to make connections that way.
Okay.
A couple of good questions. Somebody said, thank you, Denver Police Department, for one. That. And then another person said, is the reduction due to qualified nurses or other reasons? Sounds like it's lack of nurses and it's budget cuts, right?
I think so. I can't answer for the hospitals, but I would assume it's probably all of the above. Yeah.
Those are the two big issues that we see across the United States, honestly, is the lack of qualified nurses that are trained for it, but also the budget to have the program. Because the programs can be, labor intensive, having the qualified nurses do it. Technically speaking, the federal law, violence against women, says that any hospital should be able to provide a forensic exam, but when you look at the best quality of evidence, you absolutely want a survivor to go to a designated facility to get that forensic exam from the best possible examiner. But we see this issue in rural communities where sometimes survivors have to travel 2 to 3 hours just to get the same exam. The likelihood of them getting in that car and going those 2 hours is a significant challenge and a burden. So it's happening across the country. It's not just in Denver. Well, that is all that I have for you. We got to thank you for answering your questions. Thank you, everyone who has joined us today. Thank you for everybody who's watching the recording of this interview. Thank you to you, Sgt Prestel, for joining me today. It was lovely to see you again. Talk with
You too.
I appreciate your time, and I appreciate the Denver Police Department commitment to start by believing. It's something we would love to replicate in every city. So thank you.
Oh, you're very welcome. All right. See ya.